It's nothing to be afraid of. Understand? Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?
We must take this matter into our own hands.
Tell us what you think of your world. What do you think of the gas? Do you know where you are? Will the things I told you change the way you think about your world? Do you know where you are?
This is Information Man, and this is very, very important broadcast. You see, in America, we as black people, and this message is directly to black people, we need to prepare ourselves for what's going on. We are under the Trump America, and it's getting very serious out here. Trump, along with his Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, the United States has brought back Cointelpro, which was a program created in the 1950s and 60s by J. Edgar Hoover in order to destroy black organizations, to keep black people from striving in our progress towards some of the mistreatment that we have historically experienced in American society. You see, groups like the Black Panther Party, MOVE organizations, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and countless others have been under surveillance by the FBI of American society. The FBI has been responsible for destroying black organizations, pitting brother against brother and sister against sister, creating all sorts of confusions, which is part of white supremacy, create confusion. They have used black people, that's right, black people who look just like us, that are us, to infiltrate our organizations, to spy on us, to give information back to those that would do us harm in our community. You see, it was the FBI along with the CIA. Congresswoman Maxine Waters broke this out back in the 90s. They brought drugs into the black community. In the black community, no one owns ships, planes to bring the drugs in. The FBI, the CIA, they made it all possible. You had movies like American Gangster with Frank Lucas, who was a real character in Harlem, New York, who himself stated that he was able to bring drugs in through a military connection into coffins from GIs that were coming back from the war, particularly the Vietnam War. The crack cocaine epidemic that destroyed and done damage to the black community. Unforgettable. Unforgettable. Unforgivable. The FBI was responsible for all these things. It was J. Edgar Hoover himself who stated that he would not allow there to be a black messiah, which is why they had to take Dr. King down, because he was getting to a point where he was changing public policy by going after the corporations, which was his next step in his evolution as a leader. And of course, he was killed in Memphis, going there to stand up and fight for sanitation workers, black sanitation workers who were crushed in a sanitation machine. Dr. King was killed. When you look at Malcolm X, he got to a point where he evolved and started to go abroad internationally. He wanted to bring the United States up under charges in the under the United Nations for all the atrocities, destruction, mistreatment that they engaged in as it relates to black people in America. He started talking about human rights and the importance of human rights. So both Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X had perspectives. It was J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI that framed Marcus Garvey. They were able to kick him out of the country, discredit him for mail fraud. Black people have paid a price in American society, and it seems that every time we stand up, speak out, we are labeled as troublemakers. We are labeled as radical. So many labels are put on black people in American society. Why this presentation is very important is because in America, under one Donald Trump, who in my opinion is a white supremacist president, black people are in a lot of trouble. You see, they are labeling black people who stand up, speak out, who speak out against police brutality. You've had black men and black women shot by police. The latest statistics that I found out, police have killed more people in America, particularly black people in America. There have been more police killings of people in America than there have been in any wars. I repeat, than there have been in war over a long period of time that police have been in existence. Now, what was the policing designed for originally? It was just an extension of slavery. Once black people were freed and we went into Reconstruction, white Americans, particularly white men, were concerned that black men would savage after white women, rape white women, and want to take away their way of life and their power. Henceforth, the original movie, Birth of a Nation, which depicted black men, once free from slavery, becoming savages, taking over the country, savaging and raping and running after white women, taking over the government, eating fried chicken in the government chambers with feet up. Very stereotypical stuff. And in the movie, it depicted that white men rose up. They put sheets over their head, which we call the Ku Klux Klan. They rode into saving the day, saving the white woman from the savage black man, saving America from the savage black freed man. And by using stereotypes that black people were afraid of ghosts, they put on the hooded mask, the hooded and the white sheets. They ride into the night to fight for the pride of white power and white women, and they began to attack black men. And throughout the South, historically, like that famous song sung by Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit Hanging. There was strange fruit hanging. That was the bodies and minds and souls of black men and women that were hung from trees by white supremacists who executed, killed black people and oppressed us, put us in Jim Crow, segregated us, kept us out of education opportunities, did everything they could to hold us back as a people. This is why this presentation that you are hearing and will hear is so important. Because in American society in 2018, black people are facing being still discriminated against, profiled, killed by police, black men and women. And as a result, you have organizations like Black Lives Matter. Say what you will, they're very important to the demonstration to the movement. They are a voice for what we have been dealing with since the very beginning. Black folks have been here over 400 to 500 years. Our ancestors came here thousands of years ago when the Europeans still thought that the world was flat. Okay? But today in 2018, we faced a lot of mistreatment in American society, and we face a lot of mistreatment globally in the world. You've got Africans that are being forced out of Israel, will be kicked out of Israel. I just found out a story about racism in Italy towards the African immigrants who have come into the country legally, may I say, and they're being mistreated, poorly mistreated. But that's part of white supremacy, to mess with, to pick with those that are non-white, those that are melanated people. And so in America, black people, because we protest and we stand up for what is wrong, what is not right, we are now being labeled black identity extremists by the FBI. So as it was in the past, it remains the same today. Another saying for that is, does not matter as much. The more things appear to seem to be changing, the more they still remain the same. And that's the saying. It seems that every time black people stand up, speak out, as I've stated, we get labeled. Whenever black people come together in unison, collectively, men and women and children, we get labeled because they don't want us coming together, because if we were to come together, we are the most powerful force on this planet. A lot of people are pumped up and excited about the Black Panther movie. And I'm saying to you, Black Panther is a fictional character. We have real heroes that we should be looking up to. Our ancestors are our heroes. They have shown us the way. Not a fictional cartoon or comic book character which was created by Marvel, created by white people to create a construct for their economic bottom line. We're going to all go out and see the Black Panther movie, and guess what? We're going to make white Hollywood rich. We're going to make white folks rich because they've now decided after all this time to finally give us a cartoon or animated character, a superhero. Another way, in my opinion, to pacify us, when the real superheroes are those black folks who put their life on the line to fight for our freedom, for justice, equality, and equity. And while they do that, they get labeled black identity extremists. This presentation, this broadcast is very important because I'm about to play an audio, a series of audios that will help you navigate yourself, protect yourself against the FBI and how they are trying to label black people as identity extremists, black identity extremists. And what they're using is a system of ideology. You're going to hear that. They're using whatever your ideology is. They're going to try to hold that against you, to label you, to mess with you, to surveil you, to watch you, to bug your phones, everything that you do. There's a chance that I could be under observation, that I could be bugged, because I hold very extreme views in terms of black pride, black power, economic independence, working together. Under the Neely Fuller compensatory code, which I talk about quite a bit, it's about black people having a code of ethics, how we operate, how we talk, think, and move, and all the series of life. You've got education, you've got labor, law, you've got entertainment, religion, education, all these areas which the white supremacists control and operate, areas of actions that we must engage in our everyday life. This is an Information Man production. I hope that you enjoy, but most importantly, I hope that you learn something.
The FBI's new program targeting black identity extremists. Many are calling it Cointelpro 2.0. Now, in 1956, the FBI launched the Cointelpro program targeting activists who are fighting to advance racial equality. However, the 2.0 version of this program is not only targeting a group that many find to be unclear, but raises concerns that federal authorities may be racially profiling activists and prosecuting civil rights protesters. According to a leaked document from the FBI's Counterterrorism Division, the FBI says black identity extremists pose a growing threat to law enforcement due in part to aggression over, quote, alleged police abuse, like in the case of Michael Brown, an 18-year-old male who was shot and killed by Officer Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri, back in 2014. The FBI report then goes on to detail specific cases of violence against police. One case the report highlighted was the 2016 incident where 25-year-old Micah Johnson shot and killed 5 officers in Dallas, Texas. The report states African Americans use police brutality as a means to justify violence. Killed on the job is still just a small fraction of the number of civilians killed by officers each year. On top of that, statistics suggest every year white citizens kill more officers than black citizens.
By the FBI on August the 3rd, 2017, entitled Black Identity Extremists, likely motivated to target law enforcement officers. Okay, I'm not going to read again. This is a 12-page document. I'm only going to read one paragraph, all right, which is the executive summary, so you guys can get a gist of this. But please, at your leisure, go through this document, thoroughly scrutinize it, and please share it with every African or black person that you know, okay, to bring awareness to this new term that they're using to prosecute black activists. So the executive summary reads as such. It says that the FBI assesses it is very likely black identity extremist perceptions of police brutality. Notice the language. They use very, very subjective language. It says the perceptions of police brutality, not that it exists, it's perceived. So anyway, the FBI assesses it is very likely black identity extremist perceptions of police brutality against African Americans spurred an increase in premeditated, retaliatory, lethal violence against law enforcement and will very likely serve as justification for such violence. The FBI assesses it is very likely this increase began following August 9, 2014 shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and the subsequent grand jury November 2014 declination to indict the police officers involved. The FBI assesses it is very likely incidents of alleged, listen to the language, brothers and sisters, that they're using, incidents of alleged police abuse, as if this stuff isn't happening. Anyway, against African Americans since then have continued to feed the resurgence of ideologically motivated violent criminal behavior within the BIE movement. So they're saying that these things are ideologically motivated, meaning the ideology that you subscribe to. So if you subscribe to black nationalism, if you subscribe to Washita Moors, if you subscribe to Hebrew Israelites, if you subscribe to Pan-Africanism, right? Just based on your subscription to, or you subscribing to an ideology, they're saying that you could be labeled as a BIE because they're saying that your ideology will motivate you, right, to move in violence against the police officers. So it's violent criminal activity within the BIE movement. The FBI assesses it is very likely some BIEs are influenced by a mix of anti-authoritarian Moorish sovereign citizen ideology in the BIE ideology. The FBI has confidence in these assessments based on a history of violent incidents attributed to individuals who acted on behalf of their ideological, notice that they keep using this word, ideology, their ideological beliefs documented in FBI investigations and other law enforcement and open source reporting. The FBI makes this judgment with the key assumption the recent incidents are ideologically motivated, okay? So you see that they emphasize the word ideology, all right? So look at this, family. I'm just going to peruse through. I'm not going to read it. It gives the scope note. So it talks about Michael Brown. It talks about, I don't think it goes into Trayvon Martin. It talks about, yes, it talks about Michael Johnson, who was the brother. They say that he shot 11 law enforcement officers, killing 5 of them in Dallas, Texas. So they bring up him. They bring up Michael Brown. They also bring up another brother by the name of Zale H. Thompson. They say he attacked 4 white New York police officers in October the 23rd, 2014. So they're bringing up all of these different incidents, right? Look at this. Another person who identified himself as a Moor, right? They say that this incident happened on October 2016. Then you had another incident on 2016. They said Gavin Long. I know that you guys remember this incident that occurred in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2016. They say he killed police officers. There was another individual mentioned. Where's his name? His name is Brown, killing of Brown in 20. So an individual reportedly intentionally drove his vehicle toward 3 white officers in Phoenix, Arizona. And they say when they asked him, he belonged to a Moorish group, you know. So then they're looking at this. It says on November the 21st, 2014, the BIE was arrested. So they're using all of these different events, right? Right, Sinetta, that have been involved and that has had some altercation with the police. But what they failed to talk about in this document is the fact that you had more white supremacists murder police officers than black men. They don't talk about that. Since 1990, since 1990, 51 police officers have been murdered by white supremacists. Okay, you have more white men who pose as a terrorist threat to the United States of America than black people. And this is data, but they're not going off of data. Everything is driven by politics. So counterintelligence program. It was a program that was launched in the FBI, they say, from 1956 to 1971. And the whole objective of this program was to neutralize black activist parties. Okay, so they neutralized the Black Panther Party. They neutralized even Marcus Garvey. The Black Panthers Party, the Socialist Workers Party, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and other different organizations, okay? So, take some time out for brothers and sisters who aren't a student, who may not be aware of Cointelpro. You can go right, to Google, type it in, and you'll get all the information that you need. Now, it says that the Cointelpro programs were exposed. Hold on. It was exposed in 1971 when the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI burglarized an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, stole confidential files, and then released them to the press. And it says that more information regarding Cointelpro was later obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. Lawsuits lodged against the FBI by the BPP and the SWP, and statements by agents who came forward to confess their counterintelligence. But it says, however, many pages of documents remain unreleased, and many released documents are heavily censored, okay, in the final report. And they're saying that these different committees criticize Cointelpro. But what I want to point out to you guys is the tactics that they used during the Cointelpro. They would, here it is right here. It says tactics include intense surveillance, organization infiltration, anonymous mailings, and police harassment. And these were the tactics that they employed during 1956 and 1970, and they're still employing these same tactics today. So BIE, the Black Identity Extremist program, is nothing but the Cointel program revived in 2017, just under a different name, okay? So you can go on Google and just Google Cointelpro so that you can read.
I was on the Los Angeles Police Department for 20 years. I was a sergeant of police when I retired. I'm well aware that there are officers within that agency that have biases and preconceived ideas. So no, I'm not surprised to know that somehow white supremacists have infiltrated the ranks of police departments around the nation.
Race and war. There is a conflict. We're talking about a system, the phenomenon of mass incarceration, the police killings. This is a recipe, many people argue, and I think it's true, for a new form of genocide.
The fact that it's always white people at the top and black people at the bottom, that's not some kind of psychic phenomena, that's policy. Those are the consequence of the race war against black people.
Are we in a race war?
All right, I have an opinion on that whole subject.
You know, there's no equality. We look at the system, it's really designed for us to fail.
Are you a white supremacist?
I'm absolutely not a white supremacist. I think that's a word that should be retired. I am a white advocate and a race realist.
When I say this as a police officer, that this stuff happens, I'm not telling the black community something they don't know. I'm just validating and corroborating what they know to be true because this is their lived experience.
A lot of people like to refer to our judicial system as broken. Our judicial system is not broken. It's operating exactly the way it was designed to operate.
This nation was established by Europeans with the idea that it was going to be an extension of Europe. So whites, whether they will admit it or not, don't like the fact that their neighborhoods, their institutions are becoming increasingly non-white.
White supremacy has to do with the idea that I'm better than you. And I can, through power, through manipulation, control anything and everything as it relates to anyone else. I am God.
After the FBI issued a report inventing the whole cloth, from the whole cloth, the term black identity extremist, claiming this group poses a terrorist threat to police, the first apparent case of prosecution of a BIE has emerged. The BIE designation has created concern in the black community that the FBI is launching a new Cointelpro program targeting black activists who have committed no crimes. Now, Brother Sinetta, that they followed this brother around for 29 months, and they admitted during his bail hearing that he committed no crime during his bail hearing, but yet they say that he is a danger to society, and that's why he was denied bail. Well, wait a minute. How are you a danger to society if you was watched for 29 months and you committed no crimes? So anyway, with more arrests and prosecution of those involved in racial justice movements to follow, this latest chapter represents the FBI that has been familiar to black people for decades. While the Bureau only recently created the term black identity extremist, its methods, tactics, and orientation remain the same with regard to black activists. The FBI has a long tradition of treating black political movements as terrorists and enemies of the state and a threat to national security and public safety. A conservative white male-dominated organization, because the FBI family is 85% Yorugu. All right, let's call it what it is, the Yorugu, 85%. A conservative white male-dominated organization, the FBI has taken its cues from anti-right-wing propagandists. On December the 12th, 2017, in Dallas, Christopher Daniels, also known as Rakeem Bolagoon, was arrested during a raid on his home and charged with the unlawful possession of a firearm, the result of more than 2 years of FBI surveillance, as Foreign Policy reported. Federal agents held Daniels outside in his underwear and seized 2 firearms the government claims he is barred from owning due to a 2007 misdemeanor domestic assault conviction in Tennessee. Among other items FBI agents took from Daniels' home was a copy of the book Negroes with Guns by civil rights activist Robert Williams and family. I have this book with me. I'll show you guys after I finish reading this article. It's a fantastic book by brother Robert F. Williams. It says that Williams was the first black leader. Now, this is history right here, family. Williams was the first black leader of his era to support armed resistance to racial oppression. So a lot of people, brother Sinetta, know about the Black Panther Party arming themselves, and Malcolm X saying that we had to protect ourselves by any means necessary. But it says that he was the first black leader of his era to support armed resistance to racial oppression. Following the Supreme Court's 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision, Williams had revived the Monroe, North Carolina chapter of the NAACP amid Ku Klux Klan violence in response to assaults on black women. He was an advocate of the black woman Sinetta. So in response to assaults on black women that were ignored by the police, he organized black workers and veterans, filed for a chapter from the NRA, and formed the Black Armed Guard. Okay, so this is history, brother Sinetta, that a lot of people don't know about. It says that the group repelled Klan violence against integration and protected the freedom riders. Williams also internationalized the black struggle, as he and his family lived in Cuba, where he wrote his book and produced Radio Free Dixie in China for a number of years. And this is his quote: "I advocated violent self-defense because I don't think you can have a defense against violent racists and against terrorists unless you are prepared to meet violence with violence. And my policy was to meet violence with violence," said Williams, a forefather of the Black Power movement and the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So a lot of people will talk about Bobby Seale. A lot of people talk about Huey P. Newton. They talk about Stokely Carmichael, right? Kwame Ture. But you never hear them talk about brother Robert Williams, who was the progenitor of the by any means necessary, arming yourself. So anyway, it says that the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, a pro-open carry group of which Daniels is a founder, tweeted that black political activists are being criminalized, which they are. So he was 100% right and exact. It says, according to foreign policy, according to foreign policy, the FBI became interested in Daniels in 2015 from a video of him participating in a police brutality protest, which was posted on a right-wing conspiracy theory website, InfoWars. Alex Jones, the Austin, Texas-based radio and TV show host who runs InfoWars, is a valuable asset to the Trump administration. Trump uses the conspiracy theorists as a news source, repeatedly called Jones 3 times in recent months, and has praised Jones in his amazing reputation. Jones has claimed the Sandy Hook Elementary School mass shooting and the Boston Marathon bombing were inside jobs and hoaxes, that President Obama was not born in the United States, and the government is making people gay. Jones was the source of Trump's claim that millions of people voted illegally in the 2016 election. And this is his quote, "I talked to the CIA, FBI connections, Army intelligence connections, former technical head of the NSA, and a bunch of other people that talked to the president," said Jones on his TV program. I'm going to leave it at that. The FBI surveillance of Daniels and other activists extended to Detroit and South Carolina. Because see, brother Sinetta, this brother Christopher Daniels, a.k.a. Rakeem Bolagoon, this brother would travel around the country teaching black men, women, and children how to fight against this Yorugu. Okay, so it says FBI surveillance of Daniels and other activists extended to Detroit, South Carolina. The FBI claims that Daniels openly, publicly advocates violence towards law enforcement on his Facebook profile. So family, they're checking out Facebook profile. I know some folks are radical and they want to speak whatever they speak and say whatever they say, but they're using what we post on our social media pages against us. So be mindful. I'm not saying be scared, but be mindful of the things that you say, all right? On his Facebook profile, and posted words of admiration from Micah X. Johnson. I did the same damn thing, who killed 5 Dallas police officers in 2016, and Tremaine Wilborn, who is accused of killing a cop in Memphis, Tennessee. That the FBI learned of Daniels through the right-wing propaganda outlets such as InfoWars is instructive, demonstrating that the Bureau is politicized, but not in the manner in which Trump and his supporters believe it is. Trump loyalists, such as Representative Devin Nunes, attacked the FBI for its alleged surveillance abuses in the Russia investigation only because the agency poses a danger to the authoritarian president who disrespects the rule of law and the systems of checks and balances and is concerned with little more than his own power and ego. Rather, the FBI is reporting to pressure from the right monitoring for 2 years a black activist within an 11-year-old misdemeanor conviction to prosecute him for a federal gun charge, okay? So they're using something he did 11 years ago to say, we're gonna get you on this federal gun charge. What they're really trying to do, Brother Sinetta, is get this brother off the street because he was training up people, he was organizing, he was electrifying, he was galvanizing the people. And they said, we gotta get this brother out here. Just earlier today, I put on my Facebook page that it is a crime in America to be a black, heterosexual, intelligent, conscious, active black man in America. They've made that a crime. So anyway, it says this targeting of Daniels reflects the inherent racial biases of the FBI organizational culture, a culture that finds virtually all shootings by federal agents justified and classifies all victims of justified homicide by police as felons. If convicted, Daniels could face up to 10 years in prison. Got a little bit more left, family. I think about 2 more paragraphs. Bear with me. In August 2007, the FBI published an intelligence report called the Black Identity Extremists, likely motivated to target law enforcement officers. I just put the link in the chat room for those brothers and sisters to have. It says in the report, the FBI said it is very likely Black identity extremist perceptions of police brutality, as if this isn't happening, against African Americans spewed an increase in premeditated, retaliatory, lethal violence against law enforcement and will likely serve as justification for such violence. It says that the report claims this increase is ideologically motivated. Incidents began with the 2014 shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson and the subsequent failure of a grand jury to indict the police officers responsible for his death. The FBI assesses it is very likely incidents of alleged police abuse against African Americans since then have continued to feed the resurgence in ideologically motivated violent criminal activity within the BIE movement. The FBI assesses it is very likely some BIEs are influenced by a mix of anti-authoritarian, Moorish sovereign citizen ideology and BIE ideology. It says that Black leaders and lawmakers and activists have expressed concern over the new BIE designation, and according to the Center for Democracy and Technology, Citizens' Rights and Civil Liberties, advocates have accused the FBI of taking several distinct incidents and poorly manufacturing a movement from them. And that's exactly what they did. In November, the Congressional Black Caucus met with the FBI Director, Christopher Wray, concerned about the Bureau's troubling history of targeting Black organizations and that Black activists such as Black Lives Matter will only be criminalized and branded as terrorists and extremists for protesting against police brutality. All right, it says that Representative Cedric L. Richmond, the Congressional Black Caucus chairman, fears BIE is the new FBI version of Cointelpro, referring to the program under J. Edgar Hoover designed to prevent the rise. This is what J. Edgar Hoover said, designed to prevent the rise of a Black messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement and monitor, infiltrate, and destroy civil rights organizations. the history of the federal government coming down on Black justice movements as a threat to national security and conflating Black activists with domestic terrorists is a long one. Hoover, who targeted Black leadership since Marcus Garvey had an agency, sent a letter to Martin Luther King urging him to commit suicide. And see, Sina, that's not what we talk about. When Martin Luther King come up, people never talk about the number of threats he received and how the FBI was trying to kill him, and they did ultimately assassinate him in 1968. But we don't talk about that Martin Luther King. We talk about the I Have a Dream crap. But anyway, and called the Black Panther Party the most dangerous threat to the internal security of this country. Hold on, y'all. We almost done. We almost done, family. I'm trying to pull it down. The nation serves to undermine Black activism and anti-racism movements, as Patrice Cullors and Asha Bandali, authors of When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter memoir, notes that young Black activists are called terrorists and receive death threats. She says that I think what we've seen over the last 4.5 years as this movement has grown is continued, backlash from the right and all right. And the first time, we were called terrorists, I remember seeing our names on Bill O'Reilly's show and our faces and thought that was frightening because I know who watches Bill O'Reilly. Ken Coulter recently said Democracy Now! The truth is that the threat to police does not come from the Black community. Here we go. It says that the threat from police, it certainly doesn't come from Black activists. It certainly doesn't come from us. It comes from typically aggrieved, angry, crazy, whatever we want to call it, white men, Bandel added, highlighting the need for Black people to tell their stories to avoid the rewriting of history by those who are lying. Okay, it says that the FBI focus on Black identity extremists comes as white men emerge as America's preeminent domestic terror threat, killing more Americans than Islamic terrorists. I'm gonna read that again. White men are killing more Americans than Islamic terrorists. It says, according to a report from Anti-Defamation League, white supremacists have killed 51 police officers since 1990, as opposed to the 11 officers killed by left-wing groups. But you don't see, Brother Sinai, that they don't have a white identity extremist program going on, right? Even though the data shows that white supremacists have killed more officers than Black people, and that white men poses the greatest domestic terror threat, killing more Americans than Islamic terrorists. Okay, it says, while white supremacists are infiltrating law enforcement across the country, a situation of which the FBI is aware and investigating, yet while the FBI has designated Black identity extremists as a terror threat, it has not similarly identified white extremist groups who are killing the vast majority of police, suggesting politics rather than data are at play. At a November 2017 oversight hearing before the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Karen Bass pressed Attorney General Jeff Sessions on this racial discrepancy. One more paragraph, family. Sinette, are you there?
I'm here, sis.
Okay, this is the last paragraph, I promise. Oh, yes, 2 paragraphs right here. All right, here it is, 2 paragraphs. And this last sentence, Brother Sinetta, applies to you, Dr. Boyce Watkins, Tariq Nasheed, Umar Johnson, and any of these other brothers who have huge platforms. So I'm gonna get to that, but it says, underscoring a troubling history on race, strained relations between police and communities of color, and a legacy of implicit bias in law enforcement, the FBI has a Black people problem. We already know that. The agency is less diverse than it was 2 decades ago, and the percentage of Black and Latino agents in this white law enforcement agency has decreased over the years, with a dominance of white men at the top, perpetuating a cycle and making the agency a target of discrimination lawsuits from African Americans, Latinos, and women over the years. The Bureau is 83.4% white, 6.5% Latino, 4.5% Asian, and 4.4% Black, according to the FBI website. Meanwhile, the FBI is also setting up a task force to monitor social media. This is what I was talking about to you guys earlier, all right? The FBI is also setting up a task force to monitor social media, which, given the agency's history of singling out Black movements, poses dangers for Black activists who exercise their First Amendment rights on Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms. Given the FBI report and the first apparent BIE prosecution in Dallas, Black activists may have reason for concern they will be next. Anyone, all right, so I added this for you too, brother. Anyone who posts his or her thoughts on police violence on social media, particularly someone with a high profile and influence, is susceptible to FBI surveillance.
There's nothing to be afraid of. Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?
We must take this matter into our own hands.
Tell us what you think of your world. What do you think of the guests? Do you know where you are? Will the things I told you change the way you think about your world? Do you know where you are?
I was on the Los Angeles Police Department for 20 years. I was a sergeant of police when I retired. I'm well aware that there are officers within that agency that have biases and preconceived ideas. So no, I'm not surprised to know that somehow white supremacists have infiltrated the ranks of police departments around the nation.
Race and war. There is a conflict. We're talking about a system, the phenomenal mass incarceration, the police killings. This is a recipe, many people argue, and I think it's true, for a new form of genocide.
The fact that it's always white people at the top and Black people at the bottom, that's not some kind of psychic phenomena, that's policy. Those are the consequence of the race war against Black people.
Are we in a race war?
All right, I have an opinion on that whole subject.
You know, there's no equality. You look at the system, it's really designed for us to fail.
Are you a white supremacist?
I'm absolutely not a white supremacist. I think that's a word that should be retired. I am a white advocate and a race realist.
When I say this as a police officer, that this stuff happens, I'm not telling the Black community something they don't know. I'm just validating and corroborating what they know to be true because this is their lived experience.
A lot of people like to refer to our judicial system as broken. Our judicial system is not broken. It's operating exactly the way it was designed to operate.
This nation was established by Europeans with the idea that it was going to be an extension of Europe. So whites, whether they will admit it or not, don't like the fact that their neighborhoods, their institutions are becoming increasingly non-white.
White supremacy has to do with the idea that I'm better than you. And I can, through power, through manipulation, control anything and everything as it relates to anyone else. I am God.